Rishi Sunak has begun his much planned speech to reboot the idea of a general election and to defend 14 years of a Conservative government. He says it's not true that the Conservative government is to blame for all the problems facing modern Britain. No, he's quite right. What's to blame for the problems facing modern Britain is Brexit, and everything else is a distraction and a consequence of that. And it's not necessarily Brexit itself. It's not necessarily the result of the referendum, which, of course, I don't like, but it doesn't matter what I like. What matters really is that when you're faced with reality, you play the hand you are dealt. And Theresa May decided to play every hand that was going. It was as if she was running through a field of corn with gay abandon and no real direction. And that's not what we want from our government. And the approach that she took, which was to bury herself in bureaucracy and confusion, that might have worked perfectly well when she was running the Home Office, or rather running the Home Office into the ground, but it doesn't work when she's managing the government. And many of our problems spin not so much from the Brexit decision at the referendum, but from the implementation of Brexit, or rather the delays which were engendered by Theresa May's faffing around, and the people that Theresa May directed to deal with Brexit. It doesn't help that Boris Johnson didn't keep his eye on the details. I don't think Boris Johnson was a particularly bad prime minister because he lied. All prime ministers lie. It comes with the job. The fact that he was found out doesn't make it any better. The fact that he was a bit of an innocent twit rather than just a twit doesn't make it any better. His real problem was his inability to concentrate on the details, and therefore to overlook the fact that without setting up a replacement for Dublin 3, he personally was responsible for the wave upon wave of small boats and the danger that those small boats and that smuggling, trafficking trade puts on desperate people. And he was also responsible for the disaster in Northern Ireland, which should never have occurred and which Chris Heaton-Harris worked so incredibly hard to sort out. So it is extraordinary, I find, that the present government seems so intent on blaming anything other than the Brexit, or rather the attempt to implement Brexit, the failure to implement Brexit correctly. So you have to be clear about this. I don't think Brexit was a good idea, but that's my opinion. Observing the way Brexit was implemented, I can draw facts and I can make a statement about the facts. Brexit was appallingly implemented. That is a fact. The first is my opinion. But the present government tries to ignore both and tries to overcloud both with a miasma of fantastical distraction. COVID, Russia, Israel, Labour. All of it is a distraction, not about the 14 years of the Conservative government. Some of that, of course, was in hoik to the Liberal, to the Lib Dems, as well as the Conservatives. But no, it's about that one decisive moment and the referendum, and then the inability to deal with that because there hadn't been forward planning. Rishi Sunak specifically says, I cannot accept Labour's idea that all the worries you have are because of 14 years of Conservative government, that all you need to do is change the people in office and these problems will magically disappear. It's not true. And he is absolutely right. And why is it not true? Because we've got into a habit in politics of putting forward people who are simply plastic cutouts, who are voicing other people's words. We've got into a habit where the slogan which is said in response to a question is more important. The soundbite, the rehearsed soundbite, is more important than answering a real question and trying together to try and find the answer. That Socratic approach. That Socratic approach is precisely why we have a confrontational parliamentary system. And if we're not going to use that, then we might as well get rid of it. Because the sprouting slogans, whether you are in the Conservative team or the Labour team, politics is not a form of football where people are waving their banners around. The banners which politics embraced from the world of advertising and the Sarches, for example, Labour's not working, great. They're there to energize an election. But once the election is over, the slogans should form a very small part of the political debate. At the moment, they form the only part of that political debate. Now, in the past 18 months, Rishi Sunak has tried reset after reset after reset. So I'm afraid you have to sit back, as Rishi Sunak is pronouncing, and he's doing it at this moment. So I'm distracting you a little from Rishi's performance, but you have to reflect on, not only is this 14 years of a Conservative government, and a lot of time since Brexit, but what is the point of reset after reset if none of them actually take? It's like somebody in a second-hand car who can't find the right gear. And in the end, it's better to get out of the car and get into a new one. Is it going to work any better? Well, it might do if you think the car is the problem. If you think the road is the problem, no amount of changing cars is going to change the performance. I personally think the road is the problem. And of the two houses of Parliament, of the two houses in Parliament, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the one that is badly in need of reform is the House of Commons. The House of Lords is in a perpetual process of change, set in motion by the Blair government, but actually already discussed long before that, discussed back in the days of Harold Wilson Heath. But getting rid of the remaining hereditary peers is not getting rid of the problem. The problem is the cronyism in the House of Lords. And the hereditary peers actually do a very good job. They're the only bit of the House of Peers that are, in fact, subject to an election. The rest of the House of Peers is about product placement and cronyism. And that's something that needs to be eradicated. We don't want a House of Peers which is simply a super version of the House of Commons. Maybe a Prime Minister would want that. But it doesn't help politics because it simply transfers, in a slower way, the process of sloganizing from one chamber into the other, and we need to change that sloganizing approach. We need, I think, to change the idea that grey is good. Grey is not good. Grey is dull and boring. We elect somebody to be our representative because we elect somebody to do three things: to have a conscience, to have a mind, to take decisions on our behalf, maybe to support a party. But we don't elect somebody to be bland and robotic in their decision-making. If somebody decides to change parties, that's just one of the three jobs that a politician is elected to do that politician has decided they're not going to do. Another one, of course, is not to vote with a conscience, to vote according to the demands of the whip. Of those three demands put upon politicians, very rarely do you get a situation where all three are fulfilled. Maybe that's what we need to push towards. Maybe we need to be looking for less whips, more conscience, more individuality, and more impulsive answers and impulsive questioning. Less of this theatrical pronouncing, less of this set speech moments where the speeches are not real speeches. When in Parliament do you see anyone other than Stephen Flynn ask a question without notes? I was always told that it was considered extremely bad form even to have a piece of paper in your hand. But I noted in a video I was looking at the other day, even Tony Benn had a piece of paper in his hand, though he didn't refer to it very often. But Parliament, and particularly the House of Commons, is in need of change. And Rishi Sunak is quite right. A general election is not necessarily going to bring about that change. But it will be a start.